Hello and welcome back to the Mental Cartographer. I'm your host Dain, and today we are going to be going through the ever so pressing question, are smells codable in languages? Well, maybe it's not ever so pressing. This might seem like a strange question at first. And I mean, we describe smells all the time, such as it smells like roses or that stinks. But perhaps when you dig deeper, you'll find that smells might be one of the hardest sensory experiences to actually capture in words. Why in the world is that? And is it even possible to do so? That's what we're going to get into today. So let's start with the basics here. What in the world is a smell? A smell is a sensory experience that comes from the stimulation of the olfactory nerve. Words and language, on the other hand, are these little powerhouses of meaning. They can encode objects, actions, concepts, relationships, and even structure our sentences, and all of these create mental representations in our brain, allowing us to convey what we want to say. The interplay between these two is especially interesting because we can say, oh, that's the color red for the color red, but for smells, what can we really say about them? Today we have Dor Dor.
Hi.
Who is our guest and will be speaking about smells with us today on the Mental Cartographer.
Speaking of smells, they are not just sensory experiences. They are also powerful triggers for memories and emotions, aren't they? I mean, one whiff of a certain perfume or freshly baked bread can transport you back to a specific moment in time. Well, for me, it's like having a portal, a magical portal to a cherished memory and emotions. For example, I have this little bottle of a synergy blend that I made and I named it Jungle Apple. It is inspired by a family holiday in Bali. Now, whenever I diffuse Jungle Apple, I am taken back to our trip to Bali. The breeze, the bamboo, the freshness, and the incredible spirit of the students from the Green School. It also reminds me of the creativity and inspiration we found at the bamboo workshop and during our stay at the bamboo villa. Well, the blend of lemongrass, bergamot, eucalyptus, patchouli, and cedarwood encapsulates all of that. It's amazing how something so simple can be so powerful in bringing those memories and emotions to life.
It's very interesting as to why you named it Jungle Abode in the first place, since smells are literally so hard to pin down in words, in many languages at least. This is called ineffability. This is the concept that some sensory experiences are just really hard or maybe even impossible to communicate through language. Strong ineffability suggests that there are no languages in the entire world that has words to fully describe certain stimuli, while weak ineffability suggests that maybe only some languages are unable to code certain stimuli. Here's an example. Think of a smell you love, like fresh bread. How would you describe it? Maybe you'd say it smells warm, it smells yeasty, it smells comforting, it smells like home. But does that really capture the smell itself? Probably not. Researchers have pointed out that most languages don't actually have specific words for smells. Instead, we rely on metaphors or comparisons, such as a banana smells like a banana drink smells like a banana. In addition to our lack of words, there are also 5.8 million distinct smells. There really just can't be enough words to cover them all. Our experiences of smell are also subjective. What I smell as a banana might be different to what you smell as a banana. And get this, humans aren't even that good at recognizing smells. When participants in studies were asked to identify common smells, they only got it right about 50% of the time. Compare that to how good humans are at recognizing colors. Usually, if you see a red color, people will know it as red. You're definitely getting it right more than 50% of the time, even if there are certain gray areas, perhaps between green and blue.
That ineffability, the difficulty in putting smells into words, might also explain why they connect so strongly with memories. Well, you don't really name a smell as much as you feel it, and that emotional connection can lock it into your memory. It's less about articulating what you are smelling and more about experiencing it with your whole being. That's why, for me, describing jungle apple isn't just about the individual sense of lemongrass or patchouli. It's about the sense of freedom, the closeness to nature, the emotions of motivation, interconnectedness with other people, and nature that I felt in Bali. It's the feeling that comes alive with every whiff, beyond what words can fully capture.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, if you think about words and smells and sensory experiences, and perhaps also other senses like sight or hearing or all of that, perhaps there really just are different uses of all of these different sensory stimuli, and perhaps for smell in particular, it's more about internalizing it rather than communicating it. Perhaps us as a society don't have as much of a need to communicate smells to one another as much as we require communicating sight. In a quick minute, we will be back and we will be talking about if coding smells, or the not able to be coded smells, is just an English problem, or if it's really a universal problem as once posited. Welcome back, and now we are going to be getting into the meat of this topic. This is where things get really fascinating. This difficulty with smells is not universal. There are actually languages that are fantastic at describing smells. Take Jahai, for example. It's a language spoken by a hunter-gatherer community in Southeast Asia. Jahai speakers have specific words for smells that don't rely on comparisons or metaphors. For instance, they have words that are used to describe floral or fruity smells, and you can tell exactly what smell they are referring to when they say the word. What's amazing is that Jahai speakers are just as good at naming smells as they are at naming colors. When you put that into contrast with English speakers who can describe colors easily but really struggle with smells.
Oh, that's interesting. In some cultures where smells play a bigger role in daily life, I wonder if they are also more intricately tied to memories. For example, certain ceremonies or traditional foods must create lasting memories through their distinctive smells. Like in Bali, I remember how the scent of cloth, incense, and fresh flowers from the offerings added a whole other layer to my experience, one that felt spiritual and connected. It seems like languages like Jahai, right? Jahai not only describe smells, but also encapsulate the emotions and memories attached to them. They create a sense of place and meaning that's so deeply connected to their culture.
Oh, yes, I totally agree with that. Right now in my head, I am literally just smelling food.
Oh, definitely me too. So, why are some languages so much better at coding smells?
Well, one theory focuses on cultural importance. This suggests that in societies such as like the Jahai, where smell might play a bigger role, say hunting or identifying edible plants, it makes sense that their language would evolve to describe smells more precisely. On the flip side, in societies where visual cues are more dominant, like many Western cultures, language might develop more around sight and less around smell. But even within these constraints, some researchers argue that there's no fundamental reason smells can't be described.
It's fascinating to think about how a culture's relationship with their environment shapes its language. When I consider how the Jahai describe smells, it's clear that their environment demands a deeper understanding of scents. For them, being able to precisely identify smells is a necessity for survival. Knowing which plants are edible or which smells indicate danger. I wonder if this stronger connection to nature and survival gives their sense of smell a more prominent place in memory too. It feels like, for them, the world is alive with sense in a way that's deeply rooted in their everyday lives. And that influences how they remember and make sense of their surroundings.
So, what does this all mean? For starters, the idea that smells are impossible to describe is false. What we're really seeing is variability across cultures and languages. Some cultures place a greater emphasis on smell, and their languages reflect that. This also highlights an important point about perspective. Much of the research on smells and language has been done in Western contexts, where smells don't play as central a role. But when we look at other cultures, we see a much richer picture.
I think there's something really beautiful in this idea of expanding our vocabulary for smells. Maybe it's not just about coming up with new words, but about paying closer attention to what's around us, to stop and notice the scents that make up our environment. It makes me think that if we put more emphasis on scent, we could change the way we remember moments and experience our daily lives. Maybe it's about being present and letting these little, often overlooked details really speak to us. It's a practice of being mindful and letting our sense of smell enrich our connection with the world.
At the end of the day, smell is one of our senses, and it is one that we used a lot. Though we may instead use it more unconsciously. We may just be breathing, and the air molecules simply enter our nose and get processed in our brain. Though we may not use as many cognitive resources for it, at least in populations where English or other languages that do not code smells as much are predominant, we should still think about how our language influences the perception that we have of the world. Well, that's all the time we have for today's episode of the Mental Cartographer, but I will see you next month, and of course, Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year!
Woo! Woo!